The big picture on this pandemic is that never before, since the dawn of human civilization, has one event impacted so many people on the planet at once. It has not happened. So obviously this is a very big event. You could say the biggest event in human history. Also, the scientists who are grappling with this virus, they have been revising their knowledge about the virus every few weeks, and they have been saying they have never encountered a virus quite like this. For historical perspective, the last time something this big happened was about 100 years ago. They call it the Spanish flu, not because it started in Spain. It started in the United States. But the name is the Spanish flu. But that was the flu. This virus, COVID-19, SARS-CoV-2, it's 10 times deadlier than the virus that was responsible for the Spanish flu pandemic about 100 years ago. Back then, about a third of human population got infected, and anywhere between 50 and 100 million people died. Also, I've been reading up on this pandemic pretty much every day, 6 days a week, to the tune of 8, 10, 12 hours a day. Some days it's 5 hours, some days it is 15 hours, but on average, 8, 10 hours a day for the past 4 months. And being the political person that I am, I've always also been catching up on the political news, and it feels to me like everything has accelerated. Things are just moving faster. Before the pandemic, while the US-China trade war was going on, I could not have predicted what China has just done in Hong Kong. And this is not one person, this is not Xi Jinping, this is not the Chinese president alone. Pretty much the entire Chinese parliament, they call it the People's Congress, it was pretty much an unanimous decision, which means there is not much wiggle room. It might not make sense to hope that they might reverse it or weaken it, or that Xi Jinping might be able to do something about it. And not handled well, this might as well throw the world into a new Cold War, which would be a big event in its own right. But that aside, just looking at the American scene and about how badly it has been mishandled, Rwanda is doing better. The US is doing worse than every industrialized economy. It is in bad shape. It feels like one of those wildfires in California, or that big fire that happened in Australia this past winter for the Northern Hemisphere and summer for Australia. That is what it feels like. Things are about to go out of hand. Trump's incompetence is being seen on a daily basis. In this scenario, when the big picture is what it is, when the historical perspective is what it is, when the scientific facts which are still emerging, they are what they are. What are institutions supposed to do? What is a school supposed to do? What is a college supposed to do? What is a boarding school supposed to do? What is a corporation supposed to do? What is a county supposed to do? What is a state supposed to do? What is a country supposed to do? When you only focus on things that you can do, say as a person or an organization, what can you do? There was much talk of herd immunity a few months back, and there still is. But now there is data showing even when somebody gets infected, that the resultant immunity doesn't last very long, maybe a few months, which means maybe herd immunity is not an option. It was not beforehand either. Even if herd immunity was an option, you could not have risked infecting 2/3 of your population knowing that 1 to 2% might die. So there is this big talk about the vaccine. Dr. Fauci, the leading authority in the US on this topic, I was just reading yesterday that he is optimistic that we might have a vaccine by the end of the year. His optimism would be informed optimism, so I would listen to him. But even if there is a vaccine, there's this huge challenge of logistics. How do you get this to everybody? And it is not just about saying, how do you take it to the poor countries? How do you take it to enough people in the US? How do you take it to people who refuse to wear masks and might very well refuse to take the vaccine? Right? So that is its own challenge. So in this scenario, one thing I've thought about a lot is, what is an individual supposed to do? What are the options for, say, a boarding school or a residential college or a corporation? Some of the basic facts are common sense, although people are struggling with it still, like wear a mask. If 90% of the people in a country were to just follow the two rules where everybody wears a mask, you don't leave home without wearing a mask, and you stay 6 feet away from everybody all the time. If at least 90% of the people in a city, in a country were to do this much, that would be as good as if the vaccine had already arrived and enough people had already been given a dose. But we are not managing to do even that, right? So it's not just about the biology of the virus and what we can do. We also have to deal with the human being, right? Why do people respond or not respond? That is its own challenge, and I feel like a lot of people who are trying to get this message across about the mask and social distancing are missing out on the human element. Maybe you are not approaching people right. Maybe instead of bombarding people with the same message, you should let them speak. Instead of saying wear a mask, you should ask, why would you not wear a mask, and let them speak and listen. Listen very hard. And that might help us navigate this. So I feel like we have to come from the virus angle, which is masking, social distancing, washing your hands. Also, some low-tech stuff like, and I heard this from some guy in India who was caught in Wuhan when the virus first emerged, and his video said, inhale steam every day and drink hot water several times a day, because this virus starts in your nose and your mouth, and if you inhale steam once a day, several times a day, and if you drink hot water several times a day, that would be very helpful, and I buy into that. I don't see people in the US or in Europe talking much about this low-tech solution, but I buy into this. It makes sense. It makes as much sense to me as wearing a mask and washing hands thoroughly 3-4 times a day and social distancing. This idea of inhaling steam and drinking hot water, I put in the same category. So there are things that individuals can do, there are things that organizations can do, and there are things that leaders of organizations can do. When you have the solution, but you can't take it to everybody. As a leader, you also have to come from the human angle. You have to figure it out, like taking the no is not an option, and you can't force somebody to do something that they will not do. So that human challenge has to be faced.